One thing I think we can all agree upon as adults is there is never going to be one agreed upon way to raise and educate a child. However, I think we can also agree, no matter what you believe, with the rates of anxiety and depression going up, as well as the teenage suicide rate now, I think we can also agree that something isn't right with the way we are raising our children in today's society as a whole. So I'm just going to say it one more time. I do not feel like absolutely everybody should home educate, but my experience has been it is the best choice for us, and it could be a better choice for a lot of other people, possibly. And a lot of them shy away because of the stigma regarding it. Because let's be honest, there's still a lot of people that think that homeschooling is weird and that people who are homeschooled are weird. And I just want to know where all these well adjusted, socially acceptable people are if the public education system just churns them out like 90 to 100% of the time, like people want to insinuate. You're free to think that that is a superior way to socialize and educate a child, and I am also free to think that it is not. So, there has been a lot of this study floating around social media for a few years now regarding parents and the time that they spend with their children. It was basically saying that the time you spend with your children, the quality of it matters more than the amount. And I do believe that is an important message for parents who cannot spend a lot of time with their children, that you should make it quality. You should try to make it count when you do have the few hours you do with them on the weekend or what have you. But I think that more parents need to understand that that is where us home educating parents are coming from in terms of quality socialization with our kids. When you home educate and you do it right, it is a job in and of itself to make a schedule and maintain that schedule for your children. And I honestly feel, after 10 years of doing it, that they get more quality socialization when they are home educated and are out in the real world more. And what I mean by that is they are put in activities where they have similar interests with their peers, with people outside of their exact age group, sometimes two. And there's always a good mix of kids. There's always people to look up to, and there's always people to help. Now, when you put your child in a school for 5 days a week, most of the waking hours, 10 months out of the year, with the same 2 dozen or so of their peers who all happen to be within a year of their age range, it's just not the same quality socialization when it's basically recess and lunchtime and maybe a little bit of before and after school activity, because they're not spending that 8 hours socializing. They're told to be quiet and be still, usually in an assigned seat. And the farther removed I get from that, the more I realize how it just isn't quality socialization. The next most common and valid concern is the quality of education that home educated children will have. In my opinion, if you are motivated, you can give your child a quality education heavily thanks to free resources anybody can find and have access to through the internet, let alone the paid ones you can get and all the resources in the community. I've lived in 3 states, in a city, in the suburbs of one, and in a small town. There's always communities that offer group field trips, another opportunity to socialize, make new friends, meet up with friends, and to also get great family activities / field trips at a very good discounted rate, sometimes for free. Any good parent is going to have concerns over their children's social life as well as their education. But in my opinion, you just can't beat all the one-on-one time you get as a home educating family. The longer time goes on, the more I rest assured that I am giving my children a superior education compared to that which they would have gotten through the public school system, especially considering things like Common Core math and the fact that they don't even teach cursive in the arts in a lot of schools anymore. Something that really bothers me is the way we teach history. Did you know that Alexander Graham Bell didn't invent the telephone? In 2002, our own U.S. government said in a resolution that Italian immigrant Antonio Meucci was the actual inventor of the telephone. But to this day, there's still lessons being taught in schools that Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone. And there's all sorts of things like this. I never taught my children about Columbus Day. 10 years ago, I said, we're not going to start celebrating it like this. We started learning history way, way, way from before early American history. The last most common concern people have in regards to home education is financial stability and how we make it work on one income. My first answer to that is by simply cutting corners. A lot of people that don't live off one income don't, such as we've always had one car. We don't often get professional haircuts. I've never gotten my nails done. I like to buy everything on sale, out of season. I don't buy anything such as seasonal items, home decor items, unless it is literally out of season. Like the day after Christmas is when I've gotten most of my Christmas decorations. And like winter coats and things like that, I try to purchase them at the very end of the season, beginning of the spring and summer season, and try to get as many things as you can at the thrift shop and on clearance. We've saved a lot of our kids' things throughout the years, and I have a lot of good quality toys that have lasted through all three kids. And same thing with textbooks. I've gotten a lot of great textbooks used. We used to live next to a Goodwill depot, actually a book depot. It was amazing. Even though I don't like to support Goodwill, it was quite a great place for us to get a lot of our books and resources. So there's ways to make it work. And it's totally taught me to make a dollar stretch and to appreciate absolutely every cent of my husband's hard-earned cash. I stock up on sale items at the grocery store, and we use Groupons, take advantage of stuff like that to get family getaways and little family vacations. We just really try to plan ahead and be mindful of every dollar. We've never taken a tax return and spent it on fun things such as big screen TVs or anything like that. We always spend it on things that we need and bills. People tend to judge home educating families and home educated children, even in this era where like everything is accepted, which I think it's good. It's good we are more allowed to be our unique individual selves. But for some reason, there's still this stigma regarding homeschooling when it isn't inherently weird. What is weird is putting your small child in a school as early as we do and expecting them to thrive, seeing they clearly are not thriving and not doing anything about it. So I just can't say it enough. Like, I'm not saying absolutely everybody has to homeschool, but I really hope this sheds light at least to some people who looked down upon it before maybe, or judged or just misunderstood why some parents choose to keep their kids close. My kids are absolutely thriving. I get comments from people often that don't know us, like saying, they're so happy. They're so happy. Is it somebody's birthday? It's like, it's some novel thing to see like an older, truly happy child anymore. And it's not funny. But so instead of like recommending a school or asking how a home educated mom intends on paying for college since she doesn't work, these are things that have actually happened to me. When you happen to meet somebody who is home educating, if you're curious, ask it in a way like, what activities does our community provide for your home educating family and peers? Like, it's fine to be curious, but don't demean and don't look down upon when it's actually pretty natural, which leads me up to what I'm going to close with, which is an article I found after I wrote this little script, including the stuff about socialization, quality of education, and the financial stability questions, which are so common among people who are curious and people who are contemplating home education. I'm going to close out on this article I found, just researching, that really spoke to me And it did validate some concerns I have, honestly. And I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad. I just honestly really want to try to open some eyes to this. So thanks for listening. And I'll leave the link if you want to read the article yourself and not listen to me read it for 5 minutes. The Decline of Children in the Moral Sense. Problems that used to be rare are becoming mainstream. Charles Darwin had high hopes for humanity. He pointed to the unique way that human evolution was driven in part by a moral sense. Its key evolutionary features are the social instincts, taking pleasure in the company of others, and feeling sympathy for fellow humans. It was promoted by intellectual abilities such as memory for the past and the ability to contrast one's desires with the intentions of others, leading to the conscious development and, after language acquisition, concern for the opinion of others and the community at large. Darwin's moral sense is often interpreted as if these characteristics are universal among human beings, but empirical research demonstrates how early experience in caregiver-child relationships influence the development of community-minded maturation. Our work shows that the roots of moral functioning from early in life, in infancy, and depend on the effective quality of family and community support. Today, child rearing practices and family supports in the U.S. are undermining the development of the moral sense. As indexed by a recent UNICEF study of child well-being in 21 rich countries that ranked the U.S. 20th in family and peer relationships and 21st in health and safety, by the growth of childhood problems, and by the burgeoning prison population, American culture may be deviating increasingly from traditional social practices that emerged in our ancestral environment of evolutionary adaptedness, EEA. Empathy, the backbone of compassionate and moral behavior, is decreasing among college students. Anthropologists who have documented early life for children in foraging communities note that young children in foraging cultures are nursed frequently, held, touched, or kept near others almost constantly, frequently cared for by individuals other than their mothers, though seldom by older siblings, experience prompt responses to their fusses and cries, and enjoyed multi-age free playgroups in early childhood, along with natural childbirth in 2 to 5 years of breastfeeding. My laboratory and others are documenting the effects of these practices on child outcomes and finding relations to intelligence, cooperation, conscious, empathy, self-control, aggression, and depression. In fact, the way we raise our children, it seems that the USA is increasingly depriving them of the practices that lead to well-being in a moral sense. We have among the worst mother and infant mortality in the world, in part because the obstetric system is geared toward efficiency as opposed to concern for child well-being. Breastfeeding is too frequently discouraged by a medical system that routinely interferes with the establishment of breastfeeding in the first few days of life. Based largely on unfounded fears and extreme cases, parents are encouraged to sleep apart from their infants who have limited physical contact with caregivers during the day. Many parents believe that letting a baby cry is compatible with adequate parenting. It's not. Instead of shared caregiving by extended family members, as was typical for our species, many children spend their early years in emotionally suboptimal daycare facilities with little individualized responsive care. Centers and schools typically separate children into the same age groups where they are seldom allowed to play freely with each other in the natural world, interfering with healthy development of both body and brain. We can now map the suboptimal consequences that arise from suboptimal care. Formula-fed infants have worse outcomes on every front, but has been examined. Lack of touch and social support have detrimental effects on children's growth and development. Regular caregiver neglect through non-responsiveness to infant fusses and cries, perhaps due to overstressed parents or daycare workers, promotes the development of a stressed brain that is detrimental to physical, social, and moral outcomes. Free play, once a hallmark of childhood, is now becoming scarce, despite recent findings that it is critical for maintaining mental health, developing intelligence, and a fully social brain. These are just the tip of the iceberg. It is becoming increasingly clear that the ways we are raising our children today are not the ways humans are designed to thrive. As Thomas Lewis and colleagues point out, a good deal of modern American culture is an extended experiment in the effects of depriving people of what they crave most. The ill effects of these missing ancestral practices are becoming evident as children's well-being is worse than 50 years ago. Characteristics that used to be limited to a subset of the population from neglect and abuse are becoming mainstream. Too many children are arriving at school with poor social skills, poor emotion regulation, and habits that do not promote pro-social behaviors or life success. The USA has epidemics of anxiety and depression among the young, indeed all age groups, and these are real numbers, not artifacts of increased diagnosis. Rates of young children whose behavior displays aggression, delinquency, or hyperactivity are estimated to be as high as 25%. The expulsion rate of pre-kindergarten children and the number of children under age 5 with psychosocial problems or on psychotropic medications have increased dramatically. 10 years ago, it was determined that 1 of 4 teenagers was at risk for a poor life outcome, and trends have not improved. Although we can continue to minimize these problems and the risks in child rearing we are taking, the negative trajectories in well-being among children in the USA suggest that a re-examination of our cultural practices is needed. To the extent that our kids are not fully functioning threads in the social fabric, the quality of our cultural moral fiber is diminishing. What Darwin considered the moral engine of positive human thriving may be under threat. Ill-advised practices and beliefs have become normalized without much fanfare, such as the common use of infant formula, the isolation of infants in their own rooms, the belief that responding too quickly to a fussing baby is spoiling it, the placing of infants in impersonal daycare, and so on. We recommend that scientists and citizens step back from and re-examine these common culturally accepted practices and pay attention to potential lifetime effects on people. It is an ethical issue. Don't blame mothers. Before the last decades, mothers were never alone in raising children. They always had the extended family and friends on a daily basis. The responsibility for child rearing belongs to the whole community and how it sets up neighborhoods, workplace life, policies that support families, and school practices. We can change our culture again to support children and families. Perhaps the greatest challenge is that many of us were raised in less than ideal conditions, and we think we turned out just fine. We are the frogs in the pot that started out in cold water. Now that the water is hot, we can't jump out.